continue to tomorrow. Because there is a link between accumulation and the politics. So that our problem, and I sometimes wonder, our problem as a nation, if you ask me honestly, has never been generational, young and old, has never been gender, women, men and women, has never been class, rich and poor. Our problem has been these narrow visions that we have of survival and perpetuity, which makes political expedience and ethnicity actually tools that we cherish and relish as political elites. And that's why you realize that it's not so much about Trevor Ombincha can deliver in some ministry that deals with journalism and this. No. It's really about can I get a channel through Trevor to make a few things and a few of my henchmen. 2027 is coming, so that we buy this thing.
All right, hold that thought. Let's cross over back to Stephen Leto.
Thank you very much, Waziri. We're also seeing the Speaker of the Senate, Mr. Kingi, is here. We don't know whether he will also have speak to us on this Madaraka Day. Remember, there has been a lot of issues surrounding issues to do with the devolution, the issue to do with resources. Speaker, please just speak to us and wish Kenyans Madaraka Day. Happy Madaraka Day to you. Speaker, you have to say.
Ningependa tu kwa ombea wa Kenya kila laheri wakati tunasherehekea sikukuu ya Madaraka hivi leo. Ni sana kwa taifa letu la Kenya, manake linaleta kumbukumbu ambapo wale ambao walijitolea kwa hamu na gamu kupigana na mbeberu ili kuona kwamba Kenya imekuwa huru na tumepata madaraka ya kujitawala wenyewe. Kwa hivyo ni siku muhimu na ni siku ambayo Kenya lazima wajivunie na wajikumbushe mengi ya kwamba tulipotoka ni kubaya, tulikuwa tuko katika minyororo ya mabeberu, lakini angalau sasa tuko na demokrasia yetu, tunajitawala wenyewe. Kwa hivyo ni siku ya kufurahikia kama Wakenya, na pia ni siku ya Wakenya kuweka vichwa pamoja na kuanza kujiuliza, baada ya miaka hii yote ya kupata uhuru wa kujitawala, ni yapi ambayo tumeweza kuyatekeleza sisi wenyewe kama Waafrika weusi, sisi wenyewe kama Wakenya, baada ya kumfurusha mzungu, baada ya kumfurusha Mwingereza, ni yapi sisi wenyewe ambao pia tumeweza kuyatekeleza. Kwa hivyo wakati tunasherehekea siku hii, pia ni siku mwafaka ya kuweka bongo fikra pamoja, kujiuliza, je, safari hii ya kuwa na uwezo na uhuru wa kujitawala, ni yapi ambao tumeweza kuyatekeleza kuona kwamba nchi hii imeenda mbele kimaendeleo.
Je, kama seneti hali ya ugatuzi iko vipi? Manake magavana wanalalamika pesa hakuna kwenye kaunti.
Mambo ya hela bila shaka ni mambo ambayo yanatekelezwa na executive. Kama seneti, ukiangalia katika katiba yetu ni kwamba seneti jukumu lake kubwa sana ni kutetea na kuhakikisha kwamba haki ya serikali za kaunti zimelindwa vilivyo. Na nafikiri miaka hiyo yote 10 na tunaenda 11 sasa, seneti imesimama kidete kutetea haki ya serikali za kaunti, kuona kwamba haihujumiki wakati wanatekeleza majukumu yao. Kwa hivyo kusema kweli ni kwamba kama seneti imetekeleza wajibu wake wa kisheria, wa kikatiba, kuona kwamba serikali za kaunti zimesimama na zimelindwa vilivyo.
Thank you very much, Speaker of the Senate. This is the time we are just trying to see what exactly is happening in terms of, it's quite a small space here at the main entrance, but of course that is exactly the situation here at the main entrance, where we are anticipating several arrivals. Now the more dignitaries to continue coming in. Of course, from governors, there has been also a complaint, and we will also want to speak to the governor for Kirinyaga and the chair of the Council of Governors, Anne Waiguru, to speak on the issue of the finances in county, because there has been a lot of threats from the COG that the counties could be headed to a shutdown because of a lack of finances, and that is what we are, of course, waiting to hear from the governors, who I'm told will be arriving any moment from now. But very quickly, before the president boards these CNC, I want my cameraman, Mauritius Odur, just to take what I would call the last pictures of that, where the president will be riding on. Well maintained, it has been well. It has been well guarded since it arrived here, and of course that is where the president will be riding on to go all the way around the stadium, acknowledging greetings from members of the public who have turned up for this year's Madaraka Day celebrations. Right here we are having the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Moses Wetangula. Happy Madaraka Day, Speaker.
Which are the many questions?
So many questions across the country right now,
yes.
Especially on the role of democracy. You have seen, on democracy, you've seen what the opposition is saying about lack of democracy, a decision that will also be coming to your house soon, and so many other things that
yes.
are in question. What would you say about where we are as a country today?
At 60, we certainly have come of age. Since independence, we have had regular elections at the level of democracy, with challenges, of course, but we have managed to successfully have now the 5th president. That is a feather in our democratic cap that we should be proud of. What we should focus on is now, at 60, what social transformation do we give to our country? How do we get rid of abject poverty in our country, provide clean water, sound, decent health care, education for all, and all these issues that we have been talking about for the last 60 years. I think now it's time to take a new trajectory, reduce unnecessary and unhelpful arguments in our politics, and focus on how to uplift the lives of our people. That is what this day should signify. Our forefathers fought for independence. They brought independence. We should not betray them by derailing the cause for which they fought. Thank you.
Yet at 60, Speaker.
The theme of this year is on SMEs. And they are still complaining about the economy. SMEs.
Yes.
Exactly. And what do you have to say? They are still complaining.
The world is now going smart economy, and Kenya should not be left behind. So we'll do everything we can to move in that direction.
At 60 years, Mr. Speaker,
yes.
The House you're leading, Parliament, which under the Constitution should be independent, is still accused of being working for the executive, being in bed with the executive. Our Parliament is still said not to be...
The House is independent of the executive. The House consists of political players. So you have to mix the two. The political players have caucuses outside the House, and they come to the House and vote as individuals. Caucuses. So you must be alive to that. Thank you.
Speaker. Also, the governor for Tharaka Nithi and the chair health in the Council of Governors. Health is one of the critical issues that we are seeing. We are seeing a lot of surgeries at KEMSA. Does it concern you about the corruption at the health sector and how it affects the people you lead at the county level?
My biggest concern is delivery of health to the people. That is my greatest concern. And anything that would hinder that delivery of health and quality health, which is a fundamental right to every Kenyan, is what will be of concern to us. And our greatest concern is whether health will still remain supported as devolved function. Because of late we have seen a lot of efforts by some of the entities in national government to try and claw back on health, without necessarily looking like they are doing a clawback. They use other programs like from donor agencies and of course some of the budgets from the national government to claw on the same. So we are very concerned, and of particular interest, one, we have the universal health workers or universal health staff who were employed by the national government when COVID struck, and they had a contract of 3 years, which ended this month. And all of them, as we talk, they're at home because they have not been renewed the contract. Of course, these health workers don't belong to the county, they don't belong to the national government, they belong to the people. And unless those people are given their letters and they come back for a renewal of contract of 3 years, health is going to suffer. And of course, there's the issue of the mess, which we are all aware at the moment, that the equipment that have been assisting our people for the longest time since this program was consummated, we are now staring at the danger of our people converging back to the level 6 and level 5 hospitals that are in the national level to be able to get basic health services like dialysis, CT scan, and so on and so forth. So it is critical that whatever decision the national government takes in terms of how the leasing of equipment should take place, which we are not part of, as we just want the services to continue. It doesn't matter whether they will be leased or bought, we just want the services to be used to them. And so as we address Madaraka Day today, health must sit on the top list of the things you're going to address.
The disbursement of funds, what is the status and the threat to shut counties?
Yes, that is one of the issues that really affected the health sector and affected counties. We are now at, we are on the last month, basically. We are in June. In June, we are supposed to have received all monies except for June. But as it were, the last disbursement we got was of March, so we still have April and May that is still pending. And prudent use of resources, even the Public Act, or rather the Finance Act, states that all the monies for the counties or public entities should be given, or rather should be disbursed before the end of the financial year. So definitely the counties are affected. And you know, it is interesting that at the end of the financial year, you will see reports, and it is these media houses will be running them, about how counties are not performing, how they have not done any development, how they have not used the resources, the Auditor General and the Controller of Budget on the counties. Yet you cannot work without resources, because functions are supposed to be followed by resources. It is those resources or utilization of those resources that shows your performance. If you don't utilize them because you don't have them, then your performance definitely is affected. And that is how we normally brand devolution as failing. It is not failing. It is the treasury, it is the whole economy of Kenya that is failing devolution, not the managers of devolution themselves. Thank you very much.
Let me take you back to health. And we are seeing a push by medical practitioners, especially KMPDU, who revert health back to the national government for the same reason that you've mentioned, that counties have failed to ensure that we have the best of health services. You're the chair.
I think that move by the KMPDU looks, I would say it is boardroom politics. Boardroom politics because the same national government that is mandated to disperse funds to counties to pay the workers is the same one that is believed to be capable of paying the health workers if they go back to the national government. With which monies? Because if you don't have money to give to counties, how will you have money to pay the same staff when they go back to the national government? And therefore, that clamor to take back the health workers to the national government, I think it's a boardroom politics in which should not be entertained at all. Because that cannot happen unless we go back to the Mwananchi and we remove health as one of the devolved functions, which is actually under Schedule 4. There's nothing we can change there unless we go for a referendum. But of course, you know, sometimes in Kenyan politics, people take shortcuts and they assume they can get away with it. But we are aware that our judicial system is alert, and even as we make this appeal, we know that it's just hot air. It cannot happen. Thank you.
That is the governor for Tharaka Nithi just making his submissions with regard to devolution and the health docket. Well, I think for now, where the military is taking position, I'll want to hand it back to you in studio as we wait for more directions from this end. Trevor.
Yeah. You're speaking to us live and speaking to several leaders there on several issues on the 60th Madaraka Day. And my panelists are still with me in studio: Eric Theuri, LSK President; Franklin Mkwanja, Executive Director, that's CMD; and Dr. Kenneth Ombongi, Senior Lecturer, University of Nairobi, Department of History. You are finishing your thoughts on something, Dr.
It's a point I wanted to raise. I've seen the netizens I'm saying that nothing has happened in Kenya for the last 60 years. Let me, for the record, say that that is actually not what I'm saying. And, I'm being misquoted, not politically, because in Kenya, when you say you are misquoted politically, you just said what you are being said, you said. I said that the last 60 years have been a mixed bag. That's the concept that I used. And we have been a country that has witnessed quite a bit of blessings and curses, if you wanted to look at it in that binary form. We have had development and lack of it. And we have been so near to Canaan, if I may use Honorable Dinga's figurative language, and yet so far. And, you know, we are, for example, in a continent where political transitions are more by natural attrition and force. In our case, we have had elections at least. Their openness and quality and fairness is something we can debate about. I've seen the Speaker of our National Assembly talking about that. If you compare us with other African countries, at least Cameroon, Gabon, Uganda, and many others, we have not seen that. We have had quite a number of development, university education, you know, still in many countries an elite issue. Not us here. We have opened up university education, leave alone the quality of what comes out from many of these universities is something we can talk about another day. Our politics and our markets are more open than you could find in any African country. And what we are discussing here this morning is a testimony. I am in a position to say many unflattering things about our President, His Excellency Ruto, and still be sure I will sleep in my house tonight. We were never here previously. So to be able to have that now is a sign that you know, we have moved. But that does not excuse us from the challenges that we have faced. Trevor, we still have our children sleeping in the streets without food, and we call them street children. The press, you call them street Eugenes. I don't know what that is. We have our people living under circumstances of grinding poverty. We have our workers who have slave wages. That's what we are saying this morning, that yes, we have achieved something, but then there is a lot more to be achieved. And this is a challenge to our leaders. In our respective positions in society, wherever you are, you have a responsibility. Sometimes we overrate politicians. Sometimes I believe that change will not come from politicians. Change will come from among us, leaders in respective sectors, away sometimes from politics.
Okay. All right. Now we want to talk about the expectations going forward, and what are the most important issues that the president should address, in your view, Theuri, today, when he speaks on the Madaraka Day?
First of all, I think the president needs to address his mind on the challenge of fostering a true nationhood, a nation that every person feels they belong to, every community feels they are represented, a nation that reflects the values and aspirations of the Kenyan people, that reflects patriotism, that reflects merit, that reflects the desire to transform the country, not just socially and economically, but also politically. Of course, that is at the high level.
At the low level, the president should address his mind to what is currently on the lips of every Kenyan, the high cost of living. We have seen the government, when he came into office, undertake measures which are called austerity measures, but that in subsequent actions has proved that this government is not keen on any austerity measures. You saw that he had a recommendation to establish 23 officers for CAS. He's gone for 50. The salary for the CASs have been increased to something close to $1 million, Bob. Does that speak austerity? Does that speak to the sensitivity of the suffering that the Kenyans are going through? So it is a high time that he embraces being the father of the nation and not the politician that he was when he was seeking office. He has to quickly transition from being a politician to being the father of the nation, to being the holder of the aspirations of the Kenyan people, to be sensitive to the pains of every Kenyan who is spending sleepless nights struggling to make a living for themselves. So that is what I expect the president to speak to. I expect the president to speak to efforts that are being made to build and sustain integrity institutions, institutions that are intended to hold his government to accountability. I expect him to allocate adequate resources to those institutions so that they can play their rightful constitutional role. I implore the president to allocate more resources and urge his government to allocate more resources to the judiciary so that the judiciary then can be able to check not just on the excesses of the government, but also to be able to deliver decisions in a timely manner that will unlock commercial disputes, that will unlock personal disputes between, like in the small claims court, so that that money can flow into the economy and build this country, to ensure that we have adequate resources as in the legal sector to provide legal aid for the indigent Kenyans who are unable to afford it.
Yeah.
The numbers, if you look at the number of people, the prison population is composed of about 50% of remandees. These are people who are unable majority of them are young and productive. They should not be there. So the government should be able to provide resources for legal aid, because if those people then are able to get legal aid, to get advocates, to assist them deal with their legal issues, they would be able to get out of the prison system, come out and contribute to the development of this country. So there's a huge population that is suffering because of lack of legal aid. So that is, for me, is an area of priority which this government should focus on. Let the government give us value for money for the taxes that we are giving it. Because if they are able to give us value for money, then we would have no problem in paying more taxes. But as it is right now, there is no value for money for the taxes that we pay the government. So there is a very good case for lowering the tax burden, because even though I pay my taxes, I still pay my societal taxes. Because of lack of proper schooling, lack of proper health facilities, I am required to dig deep into my pocket to sustain, perhaps if you are working, to sustain your relatives, to sustain your own self when you are required to go to hospital. You have to pay more to go to a private school because the public schools are not adequately resourced. So if government wants to take more money from us, let them ensure that they are giving us good resources, good schools, good hospitals, so that we do not also on our own spend much more to access services that are, are able to meet our needs, because the government is failing to provide services through the public sector. So if they are able, if the president is able then to address those and to ask himself, to look at himself in the mirror and to ask himself, do the people he appoints in government reflect the value, reflect first the face of Kenya, and reflect merit and competence in the appointment? Do they bring honor and dignity to public service? If they do not, it is a high time that he uses this occasion to reflect on the country and to say that the trajectory I have taken is the wrong trajectory, and I'm going to change for the next 4 years so that it live up to the aspiration of the founding fathers of this country.
All right. Dr. Mbongi? The president addressed it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Trevor. You know, I actually do not envy President Ruto. And the reason I don't do that is because he is a president of a very complex society with a lot of contradictions. Very complex people. Kenyans, you remember even what President Trump said about us. When the president of such a group of people, 50 million of them, it's not something, you know, somebody can envy you for. But then the beauty about the timing that we have had him is that he belongs to our generation. President Ruto, actually, we shared a time in university, in undergraduate. I think they were finishing as we were coming in first year in the University of Nairobi. So he belongs to our generation. And probably more than any other president that we have had, he understands our situation, our condition as a country more than any one of them, who have the baggage of history. So what I could expect from him, my brother Deuri here has highlighted some things, but I have spent all my life in the education and training sector, and that is what is very close to my heart. The first thing I will expect the president to speak to, and speak to very strongly, and not just by word of mouth, not just by promising, lofty promises, you know, long in promises and short in other things like implementation and meeting. That is not what I expect. What I expect is him to speak to the education sector, because that is the only hope as a country. In fact, when you go elsewhere in Africa, what other African countries fear us about is our educated lot. Those aggressive Kenyans in the streets of Johannesburg, those aggressive Kenyans in the streets of Kigali, you find them there. Even in some of the imaginable countries like Nigeria, I was there some 2-3 years back, and you find Kenyans trying to make a living there, thanks to our education. And we have no land to grab right now, at least not where I come from. We have no employment to give our people. Let's prepare them for our education so that the world becomes their home. Somebody said that an educated man or woman may not possess even an inch of land, but the whole world is his or her home. You know, the way I could wish the president to speak to education, particularly university education, is what I have seen. We need to find a way of increasing, not hindering, access to university education. When him and I were in university, university students were not living in a state of poverty like we have now. I'm a doctor. And sometimes I sympathize when they're struggling to be students. we had access. In my time, we used to call boom. And once we get that money and paid and everything is assured, you could walk around in town like you own a section of Nairobi, even when you come from a peasant family, like I and him did. We need to revisit and ask ourselves, is university education going to give hope to the current generation in university as it did to me and him when we were in university?
Okay.
Anything outside that, I will say no.
All right.
Number two, I can see you are quick to move to somebody else. Number two is issues of poverty.
Yeah.
We cannot run away from this, Trevor. Poverty is becoming a reality that will directly affect all of us. How do we solve this? And I'm a student of Professor Amartya Sen when it comes to my understanding of poverty, where he defines poverty as lack of access. Lack of access to sectors that prepare you to attack it head-on: education, healthcare, and other social amenities. Can he speak to that, how he wants to help Kenyans? Kenyans are not less people. We are the most diligent people that you can find in terms of what we do. We are not over-dependent, but now we have been reduced to depending on our employed relatives. Many times I get calls from young people who are asking me to help them pay dowry, of all the things. Many times I receive calls of people, asking me to fund funerals, which is understandable. Right now, I am in more than 10 WhatsApp platforms to help colleagues, to help friends, to help relatives, to bury their dead, to pay bills, to pay fees. Can the president today speak to that and liberate our people from this state of grinding poverty? I'll be the happiest man in Kenya today if he speaks to that, not in terms of lofty promises, but actual tangible policy pronouncements that we can implement to lift our people from the quagmire of want.
Okay. Kwanja?
Yep. They say you campaign in poetry and you ought to govern in prose. And I think that's the fundamental shift that Kenyans expect of the president now 8 months into the job. We want to hear more of pragmatic steps forward and not the pain rhetoric and more promises on promises that fuels political tensions in the country. So that personal shift, I would want to hear him do that. Secondly, is that he must, in my view, speak to adding the independence and performance of democratic institutions. Issues of executive overreach in the manner that we are seeing in the debates ensuing around the proposed finance bill, the president should be committed and communicate that elected leaders must be left to listen to the people and make decisions depending on the people that elected them to represent them and to legislate and oversight on their behalf. I would want to hear the president speak to issues of devolution. I think the debate around devolution cannot be limited to senators seeking oversight fund, because the public participation by the county executive is not functioning, and they are looking for this money because they cannot go to do their work in the counties without having some money to throw around to demanding and impoverished citizens. Devolution discussion cannot be limited to members of county assemblies demanding salary increase. We're seeing that services are disrupted. The counties are not receiving resources. We want the president to speak to this. How are we going to deepen strengthen devolution or not disempower those institutions. The issue of inconclusive elections is important. We can see we have up to 2024 for boundaries delimitation, for instance. The IEBC is not in place. The bipartisan talks that my good friend Eric does not like. But these are things that need to be unlocked. Yeah. We want to hear the president speak and give direction and his strong views about this. Right. We want him to use this opportunity to be the president and not the politician in a campaign mode. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for making time this morning. Eric Deuri, LSK President, Franklin Kwanja, Executive Director, CMD, and Dr. Kenneth Ombongi, Senior Lecturer, University of Nairobi and Department of History. Anytime from now, the celebrations will kick off officially. The president is expected in the Moi Stadium in Embu any moment from now. Sasa nampisha Rashid Abdalla pia na sherehe za Madaraka Day miaka 60 baadaye. Nataka kumuuliza Wakenya wanajivunia nini aswa Rashid Abdalla, na Kiswahili yangu pia imeishia hapo.
Nakoaje lakini kwa salama?
Mambo vipi?
Mungu anasaidia sana.
Very good.
Na nimeweza kusikiza mengi nikiwa nyumbani hadi kufika studioni, na nafikiri kwamba kila mtu ameweza kutoa baadhi ya changamoto ambazo zipo na hatua ambazo tumepiga. Na nafikiri wakati umefika tuache kusema tuasherekea siku ya Madaraka. Maanake tukisherekea huwa tujiulizi maswali. Lakini tuseme kwamba ni siku ya kujitathmini kama taifa. Tuangalie mahali tulipokuwa, mambo yaliyofanya tupiganie uhuru, tumefika wapi, yapi tumefanya, yapi hatujafanya. Lakini tukisherekea daima kila baada ya mwaka tutasema kwamba hatujapiga hatua hapa na pale. Kujitathmini na kusaidia kuangalia ulichofanya wewe na mataifa mengine yamefanya nini. Alafu tuhakikishe kwamba hatutarudia katika ukoloni mambo leo baada ya kuondoa koloni baada ya miaka yote hiyo.
Sema. Sasa kama kupiga msasa kwa hiyo.
Tupige msasa. Tupige msasa tusaidia, maana umesikia kwamba watu wameweza kusimama madaktari. Kila sekta ina changamoto zake. Umeweza kusikia waliochanganua kwa kina. Kwa hiyo nafikiri tukijitathmini tutatoa nafasi ya kuangalia wapi tumesonga, wapi hatujasonga. Wapi lakini kila siku tuzungumza kusherekea, tutasema tuwasherekea waliopigania, kirije walipigania nini.
Kuna wale ambao sana sana wanasema shida aswani shida la Kenya,
kwa sababu siku pa wao. Na hii siku ni siku ya taifa. Na vile tukibadilisha hapo tutaweza kubadilisha mtazamo wa taifa. Ni siku ya taifa, sio siku. Na leo tunasema kwamba tutasubiri rais aseme nini. Sio siku ya rais, ni siku yetu sisi kama Wakenya. Na nafikiri hilo ni swala ambalo lazima tulizingatie miaka nenda miaka rudi.
Haya Rashid, mimi na wageni wangu taondoka, nikuachie sasa.
Naam, bila shaka. Seme kitu. Trevor Mbija alikuwa na kikao kizuri kabisa, na ndugu zangu asanteni kwa kufika na kuweza kuwasaidia Wakenya. Lakini kwa kweli kabisa kama tunavyozungumza ni kwamba ni siku muhimu sana kwa taifa la Kenya, sio siku ya viongozi. Jambo ambalo tumekuwa tukifanya miaka nenda miaka rudi. Unaambiwa kwamba maishani ukijaribu kumfanyia yule aliyekupa kiti unakuwa unafanya sawa, lakini ukijifanyia wewe ulio ndani ya kiti unakuwa unafanya makosa. Kwa nafikiri wale waliopo wafanyie sisi tuliweka kwenye kiti, wale wasifanyie kile ambacho wanafanya katika viti hivi. Nafikiri ni swala ambalo likionekana hii mijadala ya kwamba sijui kuna hoja ya ushuru ongezwe katika nyumba. Je, wanafanya kwa kusikiza sisi ama wanafanya kwa kusikiza wao? Kumbuka unapokuwa kiongozi, manifesto yako yanakuwa ya pili, matakwa ya Mkenya yanakuwa ya kwanza. Lakini yote 9-10 ni kwamba ni siku muhimu sana siku ya leo, ikiwa ni sherehe za 60 za Madaraka ambazo zinafanyika katika